Hey Brandon, how you going, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for joining me.
Of course.
All right, you are here, 2025. How's the band feeling leading up to the holidays and then straight into touring next year?
I mean, it's good. I think this last year was a little slower for us on the touring front, so we're definitely all pretty excited. I think obviously we're coming back relatively fast, which is fun for us. I think it just shows Australia how much we love you guys. But it'll be fun to come down and play these curse sets. I think they were a lot of fun to play a few of them in the States, and I think that the Australian crowd is just going to go absolute ape shit for these shows.
Awesome. And now you had the Pranoia set out last year.
Yeah.
How did you guys pick those tracks?
They sort of just fell into our lap, to be honest. Like it was a handful of the songs we had sort of toyed with already, doing like acoustic versions and like our VIP meet and greets and stuff like that. So we had kind of already been toying with different versions, but um, the ones that ended up making the record sort of just fell in our lap. It just kind of made sense to kind of reapproach some of these songs, and like when we sat down to kind of figure them out, they all came pretty natural.
Awesome. And you did three EPs last year. Now I need to ask, a lot of bands when they do songs they do them in like staggered batches. So is that the thing for you? Did you record each EP one at a time, or did you do all the songs together and then just compile from there?
Last the last batch of those EPs we all did at the same time. We went in, recorded probably about 15, 20 songs, and then sort of whittled it down and just kind of wanted to put out smaller pieces of music at a time so people could just better digest each song and just kind of put out three EPs that sort of like had their own kind of vibe to them, and it just made more sense the way people digest music these days to kind of break it up and put it out, you know, more kind of throughout the year.
Do you think you'll do like a repackage where you put them all together as one album?
What we did, it ended up coming out at the end as like a full album with like vinyl and all that stuff. So we did that at the end. But it was a kind of a cool method, I think, that we did. I think a lot of people enjoyed sort of getting new music throughout the year. So definitely might be something we do again.
Yeah. Now we're going to take you back. Do you remember the very first time you stepped away from the drum kit and went out front for Atreyu? Like what show it was?
So the first time I actually did it was back in 2019.
Yep.
We had actually gone we had a tour in Europe, and our previous singer had injured his back, and it was like within days of going to Europe, and we obviously couldn't back out because it would have cost us tens of thousands of dollars to not go. So we ended up um, calling our friend Kyle, who was our drummer now, and we did the first show we did was Slam Dunk Fest in England. After one day of rehearsal with this lineup, we did that whole tour with this lineup. Strangely enough, it was sort of foreshadowing of what the future would look like. But that was our actual first show with me up front.
Do you remember how you felt on the day?
Uh, Sort of nervous. All of our There was like a lot of technical stuff that went wrong, so like none of our in-ears were working properly. So we kind of just took on the mentality of like an old school punk show and just kind of like let it rip. So
Yep.
I think once the anxiety of like technical things going wrong went away, we just kind of like unloaded and had kind of a bit of a barbaric show, which was super fun.
Do you think that sometimes the technical aspects of touring can get in the way of the show? Like you just said then, like you had tech difficulties and you just went at it. But do you think sometimes, like for not for Atreyu, but in general, like technology can overtake and overshadow a good show?
I think if you lean on it too much, I mean, we're a band that uses technology. We have, extra instrumentation and things like that we use live, and obviously we're all on in-ears. There's a click track that's involved. A lot of times there's like guitar switches and maybe even lights that are programmed to in the computer. So like if you lean on it heavily, it can definitely be troublesome. I think you really have to know what you're doing or have someone that knows what they're doing kind of in charge of everything. But at the end of the day, we've never been put in a position where like we couldn't still pull off the show.
Yep.
I think the reality is there's a lot of bands that like their entire shows on a computer and they're just up there kind of dancing around. We're definitely not one of those bands, so we could, the show will still go on. We can still play the show. It's just it is a bit of a mind fuck uh, with dealing with anything like hearing wise, because obviously if you're playing in front of a big crowd, or if it's an important show, or it's a live stream show, and like you can't hear yourself great, or there's something wrong with like your in ears, that can obviously kind of mess up the show, or just kind of mess with your head a little bit, because you want to go out there and do your best, you know.
Yeah, understand. Yeah. Now, in researching for our interview, the one thing that really I found was cool was you're a traveling Wilburys fan. Tell me about your love for the
Uh,
band.
I mean, that came from my dad. My dad, growing up, raised me on Tom Petty and Roy Orbison, the Wilburys, and I think that he was a huge Wilburys fan. And it's funny because, like, growing up, I thought everyone knew who the Wilburys were, and realizing that a lot of people don't. I mean, I think the Wilburys are the best, super group that's ever lived.
Yeah.
I think that the Wilbury songs on that first record are arguably better than any songs put out by any of the individual artists by
Yep.
themselves. But I mean, you just can't go wrong. I love to this day are one of my favorite bands.
That the harmony work on that album should just be an isolated track.
It's unreal. It should be a master class in vocals and a master class in harmony.
Exactly right. Now, another thing, as a father and a grandfather, your first children's book, how killer is that? When did you come up with that idea?
I came up with it. I mean, it's funny that the way the world works, everything can be so fast. Maybe like 5 months ago, maybe 6 months ago, started having the idea. My kids are both, in school, first and second grade, like learning to read, wanting to get them more interested in reading in school. So, like, what better way to do that than to write a book, and then obviously put their names into the book as
Yep.
characters. So I just kind of wrote the storyline. Found a guy on the internet to illustrate it, and just kind of did the whole thing, and just kind of put it out. It was just kind of like, it was funny. I brought it up to my wife at first. I'm like, I'm doing a kid's book. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, I started writing it. And I'm gonna get it illustrated. She's like, yeah, whatever. And then one day I showed her, and she's like, what? Like, you actually did that? It was like,
Wow.
yeah. I just kind of figured it out on the internet, and then went ahead and found people and made it work. And now you can buy them on Amazon. So it's turned out really cool. And like my kids love it, and like they, are stoked to want to tell their friends about their character in the book. And I think the storyline is really cool. And like we made up, obviously being in a band and being a songwriter. I linked up with a friend of mine, Sam Tenez, who's another great writer. And we wrote like the theme song for Punk Rock Zoo, and there's like an animated like video that's gonna go along with it, like a sing along thing. So it's just something fun for kids. Like I feel this day and age, every parent is just trying to battle the like piles of useless garbage that your kids are watching
Yep.
on the internet or TV. So just trying to provide something that has a good message and is actually not total shit.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you see it being an ongoing series?
Yeah, I don't know if so the first book is called Punk Rock Zoo. I don't know if that one is going to be an ongoing series. I think, we might do some like character builds and like doing more stuff with the individual characters, but I definitely don't think it's going to be my only book. I think there'll definitely be more books in the future. And I just love the idea of like being a dad and having young kids. You kind of just like have your finger on the pulse of like what a 5, 6, 7, 8 year old is into. And
Yep.
it's just it kind of just uses a completely different side of your creativity to like make something up. So like writing music for a story or a book like that is a lot of fun too. So I think it's definitely something that you'll see more of.
Awesome. So, who's the bourbon drinker in the band with three chord bourbon?
Most of us, I think everyone except for our guitar player Travis, who's been clean sober for about a decade now almost. But we're all bourbon drinkers. Three Chords kind of approached us and wanted to do a bourbon, and we've done beers in the past,
Yep.
and they both turned out cool. They were like fun, but it's like the distribution on beer was always kind of a bit rough, and we always wanted it to just be able to people can just get it everywhere. And especially being on tour, we thought like, oh, how cool would it be able to drink like the Atreyu beer at our shows, and that was
Yep.
always pretty difficult. And we met Three Chords, their distribution and their kind of capabilities of doing so are a lot better. But then our thing was like, well, how good's it going to be? Because there's a lot of like really garbage, like I think really garbage kind of kitschy band products out
Yep.
there. So they sent us a bunch of their bourbons and like blends, and we had this whole conversation of like what we like and what we don't like about bourbon. And they sent us all these different blends and mixes that they did for us, and it was really good. So we were like,
Yep.
wow, like, this is actually good. Like I would drink this myself all the time. So we partnered up with them, and it turned out great, man. Like, and people are seeming to react. I mean, they had a bunch of like the signed bottles available, and they basically sold out of those. And now you can get it from the website. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to get it in like liquor stores and distribute all over the world. So
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of bands are slapping their name on product, and I use that term, slapping their name on it.
yeah,
And I understand that bands have got to have supplemental income these days because the record industry isn't what it was. But to hear that you guys actively put yourself in the position to research and give your thoughts means in the end it's going to be a product that the name should stand on. Is that the way you guys want to operate as a band?
100%. We're never going to do anything we don't believe in or that we don't stand behind. You know, every now and then maybe there's been like a merch design we've made where like the blanket got printed on we weren't exactly happy with. That's going to happen. But when it's something is like, I mean, you're talking about a bottle of bourbon, like it's it's not a cheap purchase. It's not an expensive bourbon, mind you, but like people are spending their hard-earned money on a beverage, like you want it to be good. I don't want people to just waste their money on like garbage because it says your band's name on it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I don't want to be Kiss and just like have our name on whatever thing we can put our name on.
And it's funny you're talking to like the hugest Kiss fan who has been to too many shows, and I completely get it because
I get it.
I have a
I
hand
think you,
typed hate message from Gene Simmons about my hate of their products.
I mean, I think even Kiss fans have
Oh,
gone throughout the years with being tired of Kiss merch. You're like, all right,
who needs a
I don't need a
fucking
Kiss coffin.
who needs a Kiss fucking golf ball?
No, it just doesn't matter.
No, I hear you, dude. I hear you. That's the funniest thing. All right. So besides Australia 2025, what are Atreyu's plans?
We are already kind of I'd say a little over halfway through writing the next album. We'll probably finish writing and recording that album in 2025. We're doing obviously the Australian Curse tour. We're doing a Curse tour in Europe, UK at the end of the year. Um, Headed to South America this year too. So very busy this year and doing a lot of fun stuff.
Awesome, man. You're here in the not too distant future, so have a safe holiday season with your family, and we look
Appreciate
forward
it.
to catching you down here very soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.